everybody. Welcome to Open Network User Group Podcast. I'm Mark Tierney. I'm ONUG's CTO. And today I'm going to be visiting with Nick Lippis. Nick is the co-founder and CEO of ONUG. We're going to catch up with Nick about really everything that's happening at ONUG, because there's some really great stuff happening at ONUG right now. But first, ONUG Fall 2022. It feels like we were just doing spring, and it was such a fantastic event, but we're already staring down the fall event, and it's going to be really great. It's going to be in Manhattan, Center 415 on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan, October 19th and 20th. So join the ONUG community of Global 2000 companies, enterprise architects, cloud providers, thought leaders, as we explore the building blocks required to create flexible, transformative IT business platforms. Go to onug.net to register for this event today. And Nick, with that, welcome, first of all.
Well,
Glad you're here.
It's always great to be here.
I bet everybody thinks that we get to talk like all the time, but it doesn't always work out like that.
I know. Well, we didn't coordinate our wardrobe either, so
right.
Happen chance.
The truth is that all I do is wear black t-shirts, and it's just a question of what they say. So I'm happy to just have them say ONUG all the time too, but I just need more. That's all.
Yeah, no, well, I'm not sure what it is with guys in black t-shirts these days. It's like every guy is wearing black t-shirts. It's like, go figure. They're trying to be.
Well, there's one easy answer. If they're thinning, so it could be a fit guy like you and it looks okay, and it could be a guy like me and maybe I'm fit underneath this. Who knows? Like, no one really knows. So
I think they're trying to be either like Steve Jobs or Jerry Garcia. I'm not quite sure which one.
Right. I think we know you'd rather be Jerry Garcia. So we're talking about the conference, and gosh, it does feel like we just finished spring, and yet I think we're at the halfway point. Like, we're 3 months out from the fall conference, which is a big conference traditionally for ONUG, right? And some pretty amazing and interesting stuff on the agenda. So what do you want to highlight on the
I think
on the fall agenda?
Well, I think there's really kind of the major theme is all about multi-cloud, right? And we're going to stick with this theme all of next year as well, because it's such an important space, but it's really around how do you connect? How do you do observability? How do you secure, and how do you automate? So we're going to be hitting on that. And then we have, for the fall program, we're working with James Wickett over at Verica, and James is doing a track on DevSecOps, which is really exciting. So a lot of great people coming in on DevSecOps. The other key thing that we're doing is we're hitting multi-cloud. We're questioning multi-cloud. It seems to be a fait accompli, in the industry, but it's really not. And so we're going to go through, is all of the pain worth the gain? And we'll chat about that in a second. And then there's all about kind of connectivity and networking. So on the networking side of it is that, there is, how do you connect your data center into multiple clouds? And we'll dive into this a little bit further into the podcast, but also there are three kind of areas around networking. The whole wide area network is being redefined, and we're going to hit on that, pretty hard. Okay.
So for those who weren't able to attend the spring conference, one of the newer features was the pavilion. What do you call it? Pavilion mode, or
live demonstration.
We had these live demonstration areas, right, on the showroom floor. It was something that you were pretty passionate about wanting to do. Yeah. And it feels like it went over very well. But what's your impression of this this whole new pavilion approach?
Yeah, no, I think, well, we're at the phase now where we're not just talking about stuff, we're actually showing how do you do it, and I think that's the key thing. So, and Mark, really, this is thanks to your leadership. It's like we have a great CSNF live demonstration going on. We have orchestration and automation, and also the BAA kind of network cloud. So those three, I talked about the major themes around multi-cloud. So these three Actually the fourth one is built in there. It's kind of the orchestration automation is really around observability and also automation, right? So all of that is now being covered on the show floor and live. So we have a lot of companies that are coming in to actually demonstrate how you actually do this, so that's huge.
I
That's
think,
really huge.
yeah, I think what I like about it, and still like I'm the newest member to the ONUG team, but when I look at ONUG as two lines of business, almost like, we've got the conference business and then the collaborative, which is so powerful. And it really felt to me like the live demo areas, these pavilion areas, really brought the two together in a way that
Yeah.
I had not seen before. You've got the working groups really in this very focused space, as and part of the conference, as opposed to just doing a report out for a few minutes. It's they have kind of a more dominant role in sharing what
Yeah.
they're doing, and a lot of these best practices depending on which team it is. So if it's network cloud and they've just recently published a playbook that focuses on agility in today's multi-cloud environment, or the orchestration automation team, as you said, and the taxonomy and maturity model that they've created for how to approach, how to implement orchestration automation tools and techniques, and then obviously CSNF. So, and in some cases, we actually had some overlap there. We had ONA demonstrating with the CSNF initiative, so that was kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. By having the live demonstrations, it just tied everything together, and it's very reminiscent of like the early days of interop, where, there was kind of like where the industry started moving towards TCP/IP as the way to connect computing together over networking. And I think we're at a similar point, although there isn't kind of a standard like TCP/IP, but it's more about kind of options and choice, which is what TCP/IP gave the industry. Multi-cloud is delivering that options and choices, and there's multiple different layers associated with it. So I think that's really what we're starting to see, is that how do you actually pull all this stuff together, and the working groups now manifesting themselves into live demonstrations, in addition towards like all of the open source work that we do, both in terms of code with CSNF, as well as all the documents are all Creative Commons, documents as well. So
let's use this discussion about conferences as a way to segue into some new activity that is going on at ONUG, and I'll frame it like this. One of the things that we do at ONUG, I mean, I feel very driven by this. It's almost everything we do is a referendum from our enterprise consuming members. It's so important. And Nick, you are always asking our members to vote on what's most important to them, and what we should be working on next. What do we set our sights on next? And we got some pretty clear answers on what the community wants us to work on next. You want to talk about those two things?
Yeah, for sure. So like, when we put a lot of time into policy as code. So and so the community voted that, hey, they wanted to really dive into this space. It's a complicated space because like depending upon what line of business that you were, or which silo you're in IT, whether it's security, networking, cloud, development, what have you, you have a different view of what that is. And so I think what we heard is that they want kind of like the unified theory around policy as code. Give us a framework so we can guide our thinking, around it. And so I think that so we took a stab at obviously writing up a problem statement. We presented that to the steering committee and the collaborative and had them vote on if they want to allocate the resources to actually dive into this space.
Can I make a clarification on that? Because I definitely want the audience to understand the power of the collab's steering committee. So this is going to sound like I'm correcting you, but the truth is that we talked to them. and they gave us some pretty clear direction.
Yeah.
They really sent us back and said, we need more in terms of a problem statement.
Yeah.
And they wanted to see a little more definition around what we presented to them. And I think it's a real testament to some of these powerhouse firms that are on the steering committee, both from the enterprise consuming and supplier sides of the business. And that's kind of stuff. By the way, it's not a negative, right? It's like super positive kind of critical feedback if you want to launch a project, right?
Yeah.
And so they asked us to do that. We sharpened the pencil and created a little more clarity around it and got to a vote, right?
Yeah. I think that's, it's such a definitive point, because and lots of others, I would say like 99%, other kinds of industry gatherings are all driven by the vendor community. ONUG is really driven by the consumers. It is really one of the only places in the industry where the consumers collaborate together to kind of drive a result, So yeah, and the steering committee is they speak really loud and they have a lot of power, on that committee. That's for sure. And it's really interesting is that when I won't mention the steering committee member, but like during one of the meetings, like when you were giving the update, he was asking, well, are you getting support from the CSPs? And all the CSPs were there on the call. I'm calling everybody out. It's that's pretty powerful to have a whole bunch of your big customers like on it, and having them those customers help prioritize your activities, where it's usually always the other way around. Like you look at you go to any CAB, right, customer advisory board, and it's usually a whole bunch of nodding heads,
Right.
and it's usually the vendor telling them what our roadmap and where we're going and what we're doing and stuff like that. But here it's like the other way around. It's
No, you're right. There's often a lot of glad hand, and I've been on those steering committees, and I know what it's like. And there's a lot of glad handing and basically looking for customers to help them with messaging, as opposed to, no, what are you going to do and how are you going to do it?
yeah.
And that's what's different about what we do at ONUG.
Yep.
So yeah, so we've really gotten the good direction, and so our goal really is to be able to stand up this policy as code working group and do an initial report out by the fall conference. And I just think it's great to consider. We have, and Nick, help me out with the special roundtable type topics that we have at the conference.
Yeah.
And we had a policy as code roundtable, right, at the spring conference, and it was one of the most widely attended in-person events that we had in these small form factor meetings, and it was really great. But it was also clear that a lot of work needed to happen. So it's kind of cool to think that we went from a meeting like that, where there's all these executives and technical architects and whatnot having a discussion about all the holes in this process, to voting at the conference about this needing to be an initiative, to standing up a working group and having a goal to have a report out by fall. Like,
yeah. I know it's
right?
it's a great thing, and actually that one roundtable. So for those who don't know the roundtables, it's a format within ONUG. It has it's called Chatham rules, right? So like what's said in the room stays in the room. There's no press, no vendors allowed in it. So all consumers. And that meeting was supposed to it was scheduled for 45 minutes. It went for like an hour and a half. People didn't want to leave, and so it was a hot topic, that's for sure. But we were able to roll up all these different data points and get that for a vote. And so it looks like we're going to move forward on policy as code. And so we'll have our first readout for the fall. I'm not sure how much we're going to have to say. We only have 3 months, but it's it might just be a kind of, we started this and this is, our roadmap, on where we're
Directionally, yeah.
Yeah. And okay. And we want, as many people to get involved as possible, so I think that's probably be with that. session will be about.
So the other item that was voted on use case was Cloudedge, and that's not moved on at the same rate. But quite frankly, we're going to use the policy as code process as a template. So we're now writing the network cloud team is taking that on. So as opposed, at least initially, I mean, this could change, Nick, I think, but at least initially, we'll try to tackle this topic inside of the network cloud team and then see where it goes. But we've begun working on the same sort of problem statement that that we created for the policies code. So we'll use, kind of this, similar format, a template to move forward, and we'll see where it goes. But again, it's the sort of the power of the community directing us and telling the ONUG membership what we need to work on and why. Right. So
yeah, I think that's a really smart way to start it, within the network cloud working group. Because I think, it's like on the Cloudedge space, I think there are so many different models, out there. And I think that's one thing, is to kind of try to sort through all the different models and maybe present them and their pros and cons. At least that's kind of like the first way to kind of get started, and I think that will help out everybody, the vendors and, and obviously all the consumers as well. And that's
so we didn't really practice this, but it seems like a perfect segue into a topic we'd identified, that we want to talk about, and that is multi-cloud. We're obviously dealing with multi-cloud on so many of the different working groups, but it's also going to take almost a center stage, keynote kind of place at the fall conference. And, as active as we are in working on multi-cloud solutions, I feel like as an organization, like we're not afraid to hold a mirror up and ask tough questions, right? And that's going to happen at this conference, right? We're going to actually challenge some of these multi-cloud biases, right?
Yeah. So I think, so Daniel Conroy, who's the CTO over at Raytheon Technologies, is going to do the keynote, and Raytheon is the host for the fall meeting. So, and they're such a great group of people over at Raytheon. But Daniel's going to kick it off, because it's like, the thing about, multi-cloud is that we all know it's hard, it's complex, but we think it's worth it, because I think from the point of view is that, you have your developers, and as infrastructure teams, your job is to make the developer's life as easy as possible so that they can write the applications that will deliver value creation at speed, right? And so if you can offer them a wide range or access to as many cloud providers as you can, then you're basically giving them access to all the different tools and constructs that those developer or those CSPs offer, and they can pick and choose where to write applications. That's, I think, the goal here, and that provides options, that provides choices, that provides agility, that provides speed. But it's hard because all of those constructs are different, and they're going to stay different for as long as we can, as long as the CSPs, want them to, which is probably forever. But also, it's like there's a tendency, and you can understand this. It's like, I don't mean laziness in the pejorative, but a lot of times, like, hey, you understand a certain thing, and you're going to use that a lot, and that's what's happening right now in the cloud, in the developer community. There might be a certain set of tools from one CSP, and they want to use those, to almost do anything that they need to do. And sometimes they're force fitting things. And so we'll talk about this. And there's going to be, so Daniel is going to have a really great perspective on this. There's another perspective where I don't want to kind of give the whole story away, but a company that is so entangled and so entwined, their business with a cloud provider, is that they can't do anything, with any other cloud provider. They are so locked in like the old like mainframes, like of the
Yeah.
1960s, 70s, and the 80s, early 80s. They're so locked in, almost like IBM, like in that era. It's like scary, and they're scared. So we'll talk about that one, as well, kind of a cautionary tale, for a lot of folks on their cloud journey. But
And it's interesting because I feel like the discussion on that is we shouldn't do multi-cloud because look how complicated it is. Like, look how complicated it is just do one,
yeah,
right? And yet to me, that is almost a definition of why ONUG is out front on the cloud security notification framework. We've got to drive standards in cloud consumption. And I've never said this to you before, Nick, but watch me get in trouble. Everyone in the world can watch me get in trouble with my boss. I don't even think it matters if I'm consuming multiple clouds at the same time. The point is, if I don't have the option to move from one to the other because I have standards that allow it,
yeah,
whether I'm doing two at once doesn't matter. The point is that we've got to have standards that allow me to consume one, not feel like I've got vendor lock in, and I can make a move if I need to. And if I want to consume multiple simultaneously, that's great too.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I think, you're spot on. And, I want to kind of share something, but I need to hold back because I'll give away a piece of Daniel's keynote. I don't want to do that.
Listen, there's nothing wrong with holding out a carrot for coming to the conference. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. That's
yeah,
don't bury the lead, right? So
yeah. So there's,
I love it.
I think I'm so with you on there. CSNF is so important because it does, it's important on a couple different levels to have the CSPs collaborating and working together on a common industry problem, not their problem. It's an industry problem. Is really great. It's great to be part of. It's great to see them working on it. It's great to see the progress, that we're making. So I think that's really, really important. And then it's solving, a problem that is being driven by the consumers. It's like, hey, how do I consume all this telemetry, security telemetry from these cloud providers in a standard way, so that I can have some common playbooks, and I can increase the efficacy of my SOC, and I can, try to reduce as much toil in my SOC, as well. Like, so I think those are hard gains, hard tangible gains that come from a kind of telemetry standardization effort around security notification.
Well, and we said we're going to wrap up with CSNF. So if you don't mind, I'll take point on, almost a real-time update. We had a great session today. So for those of you who are not familiar with the cloud security notification framework, it is an open source initiative that was born from ONUG's Automated Cloud Governance Working Group. And this was, again, a directive from some of our biggest enterprises who wrote a white paper. If you hadn't heard the story before, I'll be brief. Wrote a white paper about all the challenges associated with consuming multi-cloud. And one of those things was how to consume security alerts and events. But the truth is it was just one of, I don't know, 6 or 7 domains, I think, Nick, that were identified in this white paper. And we're just tackling the security alert and event portion first. But there's tons of opportunity within this framework. And so now we're at a point where we've just brief update. We've delivered an MVP version of the code. We demonstrated it at the spring conference. We've recently ratified the final standard template for the canonical data model. Oracle has already published their translation for their security alerts. Microsoft, Google, and IBM are right behind, talking about that today. And we've published a starter kit that's on our GitHub site. And I'll have that on the screen. You'll be able to see that on the screen. and so anyone can go and download. And now we're, I think, within the next 2 to 3 weeks, we'll have a whole series of, I'll call it a playlist of how to consume the starter kit and how to consume the canonical data model and everything that it enables. So,
Yeah.
gosh, we went from like where we were like 18 months ago versus where we are now. It's like sort of amazing and shocking, right?
Well, it's amazing because like now these files, these mappings from all the different CSPs, it's unique. You can't get them anywhere else. You can only get it, here on the CSNF Git, and that is the beginning, I think, to unleash a bunch of creativity and innovation in the industry. And really, congratulations, Mark. I know you've been kind of leading the group into the to move through this, and it's a huge
Yeah, it's a
accomplishment.
team. It's a team effort, though. Like, I'm just the assistant principal in this thing, right? I mean, the truth is we got a lot of smart people that are doing the contributions. And if there's ever a reason for considering joining ONUG, that's it. If you're not part of the collaboration, if you're not part of the ONUG collab, this is probably the biggest reason for doing it, because you're going to get exposed to some really smart people working on some really important projects. And if you're an enterprise consumer, joining the collab means really getting this voice that we've talked about a couple of times, that is directing, right? It's a directive kind of work on these things because, and that the enterprise consumers have a lot of value we put in that because statement. Everybody needs to be listening to the business value side of what the consumers are saying. And if you're an enterprise supplier, it's, do you want to help guide the conversation? Do you want to project your brand? Do you want to be considered a leader in these particular areas? Look, everybody's got secret sauce. Developing standards doesn't change any of that, right? Just be part of where our consumers want to go, right? That's it.
So I did want to touch on networking before we close down. Do we have time?
All right. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So I think there's a pretty fascinating discussion that's and decision points that will impact multi-billion-dollar markets that we're going to talk about at this ONUG. So a lot of folks in the ONUG community don't want to use the internet for their cloud interconnect. Obviously we had MPLS before, and so that's a private network. You use the telcos to kind of like connect up your remote sites to your data centers. The key thing about that is that you had total control over the security of it. You don't have to worry about, can somebody get into that network, and so they want to do the same thing with cloud. They don't want to kind of use, internet services, ISPs, peering relationships, what have you, because you don't ever know. You don't have control. You don't have visibility. So there'll be a lot of discussion about it's called like middle mile, which I think is a kind of a telecom term. So like the telecom providers with NAS services are now looking at providing a kind of a network where you can connect your data center and then you can connect into the various different cloud providers that you want to, but it's basically private, you're not sharing that bandwidth with others. And then, so that's kind of like data center to cloud and cloud to data center, built back and forth. So that's one area in redefining the wide area network. And then it's like from the users, so like whether like branch offices, people working at home, how do you provide connectivity to them without going over the internet, either? So maybe it could be, how do you do the last mile into the middle mile? And some of that could be internet, where you maybe tunnel, into your SaaS applications, and then, or it could just be you kind of drop particular private lines into homes and so forth. So, or you use, like the new low orbit satellite systems like Starlink, and Amazon has a new service that they're rolling out, and there's a bunch of other companies that are also rolling out their own satellite, low orbit satellite systems. So I think we're on the verge of kind of redefining the whole wide area networking space, and we're going to really talk a lot about that. And this is really the way that you connect into multiple clouds. It's by, in the large enterprise, it's not internet based, because then you got to deal with all the zero trust stuff, the identity access management, stuff. It just puts so much more complexity on the ends, that I think in the large enterprise, they're looking kind of like, they'd rather not, I think is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
So anyway, I wanted to share that thought. That's kind of really exciting, I think, discussion happening.
Yeah, that's what we're all about. And again, with that, I would say you want to know more, you want to learn more, get involved with the ONUG collaborative. You can do that at onug.net. You find out everything you need to do and everything you need to know about joining the ONUG collaborative. You can do that today, again, at onug.net. So Nick, on behalf of Nick and myself, thanks to everyone for joining us today on the ONUG podcast, and we will see you on the next podcast. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. Thanks, Mark.